Thank you so much for all coming back on time again. Hopefully enjoyed the first sessions. There's a bunch of more sessions and we're ready to lunch. I'm super excited for our next speaker, who has been coming to Romania for many years, who has just shared with me that he's run teams in Romania for many years, who continues to remain a presence in Romania. So he's almost a local now, so we can thank him for that. Jonathan Rivers, he is a distinguished technology leader in customer-centric design and technology innovation. He has over 15 years of experience in digital content, advertising, and video technology. He has made many contributions in many industries. He is currently the Chief Technology Officer at Fortune. He has been CTO at a company many of you know here, 3 Pillar Global, where he led global product development, design, and engineering teams. He's been a prior Techsylvania speaker, so he's one of the people that we're really honored to have back and supporting us. And yeah, he has a very storied career across the tech industry in leadership roles. And I'm really excited that he shares his insights on technology leadership, customer-centric design, and evolving the landscape of digital content and advertising. Please give a warm round of applause to Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining us here again. It's a pleasure having you here, Jonathan.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. First, I've got to say, I am super excited. I have been working with teams in Cluj for about 12 years now. A lot of the favorite things I have ever built have been built here, and it's really exciting to get to give this talk. In fact, the product that I'm talking about, Fortune Analytics, our AI product, the front end was built with a team here at AscentCore. I've got some of my friends in the audience, which is super rad as well. So let me start with, I'm Jonathan Rivers, CTO of Fortune Magazine, or we like to call it Fortune Media. And the thing about this is I'm Fortune's first ever Chief Technology Officer. For 90 of its 95 years, Fortune Magazine has been a very small magazine in very large publishing companies. And in 2019, it was sold out of the publishing companies to a private investor, and I was asked to come in and modernize it. I inherited a website that was built first in 2016. And so that tells you how far Fortune had to go. And so part of my remit was to build out all product, all engineering, all data, all IT, and get new products to market. In 5 years, we've launched 3 startups, 3 new revenue lines. One was our first AI application. And so when I went to go write this presentation, I actually was suffering from writer's block pretty badly. I didn't want to know how I was going to approach it. So I decided I would start with a joke and the punchline to begin with. Right? We're just going to front load it with the joke and the answer. And the joke goes like this. What do AI, triathlons, and drag racing have in common? They're all money sports. Right? They're all exceptionally expensive. You're not going to win a triathlon without a ridiculously expensive carbon fiber bicycle. You know, in drag racing, I used to drag race motorcycles. We always talk about how fast can you afford to go. And there's a metaphor with software development and AI in that at the same time that scale and speed require spending a lot of money, and AIs are exceptionally expensive to run. So the 3 all take a lot of training, they take a lot of focus, and they're all sort of expensive at the same time. Now, I'm going to take a step back and talk about how did we get here? Why did a 95-year-old magazine decide to build a generative AI application? And moreover, you're asking yourselves, who is crazy enough to try and build one and get to market in 9 months? So it started as a partnership with Accenture. And it's sort of a fun story. Our CEO, Alan Murray, was meeting with the chief marketing officer of Accenture, Jill Kramer. And they were having breakfast, and I'll let you in on the things that happen to CTOs, right? So they have breakfast, and they said, what could we do together? How can we collaborate? And they go, I've got it. We will reinvent the Fortune 500 with AI. Great. So they go back and they tell their sales teams to get together and figure out what that means, which meant they came to call me and say, what can we do? How can we reinvent our single biggest piece of intellectual property with artificial intelligence? And I sat down and I thought about it. Every year when we put out the Fortune 500, we actually sell that data as a spreadsheet. So the Fortune 500 is actually 1,000 companies ranked. And we take all of that data, we enrich it with a couple of private data sources, and we sell that for $1,000, a spreadsheet, a $1,000 spreadsheet. Again, it's a 95-year-old magazine, forgive me. And the idea was, let's turn this spreadsheet into a SaaS product powered by generative AI. And everybody loved it, they were great, and they were like, but Jonathan, we need to have it out to time it with the 70th anniversary of the Fortune 500, which was June 4th. So that conversation happened back in August, and we had to go ahead and try and hit this deadline. And here's the thing, I am not adverse to deadlines. I like them. Deadlines impose a level of clarity that you don't have, right? I always say that constraints impose clarity. Now, here's the thing. I've been told I'm not agile sometimes because I agree to sort of deadlines. And I have reread the Agile Manifesto a couple of times, and it pretty much doesn't say anything about deadlines being bad or evil. So here's the thing about hitting a deadline. It takes focus. Delivering anything in 9 months or a large project takes focus. And focus can mean a lot of things, but focus is really what you say no to. And that's really important to get something to market very, very quickly. In many regards, I also have 3 additional titles to CTO. I am called CT No, the destroyer of dreams, and the crusher of other ideas. And I'm comfortable with all of those because, again, if you have a milestone that you have to hit, you need to laser focus. There are always an infinite amount of ideas, but there aren't an infinite amount of time, and you need to stay focused. Now, speaking of not being agile, this I know is not agile. Unless there are any Brits in the crowd, if you squint at it, you say it might look like SAFe or Scaled Agile framework, right? The idea that you take a deliverable and then you back out all of the sprints and you'll magically make the milestone, kind of lunacy. But where this was actually good, or why I sort of put this in, even if it isn't the most agile thing I've ever done, is showing the work streams to get a product to market very, very rapidly. So in the light blue, you have UX and design. So we just had an idea, spreadsheet product. There's a lot of thinking that has to go into how is that going to work? What does that mean? How are you going to deploy LLMs for it? You have the darker blue. You've got to build the front-end interface. You have to build out all of the infrastructure. You have the deep purple that takes up most of the space. You have to get all of your data together. You have to train the LLMs. And then the bottom, you actually have to have the business planning, your go-to-market strategy. How are you going to sell the thing? Is it going to be direct to consumer? Do you need to hire a sales team? To get a product to market doesn't require just a build. You actually have to have the entire business ready to start selling the product the day that you launch it. So, talking about AI and sort of all of the data involved, we all know that AI takes a lot of data. You've got to get it together, and if we built this thing for Fortune Analytics, what did we feed this thing, right? It takes a lot of data to make it work, and so we custom trained multiple LLMs on all of Fortune's content. Now, again, this is the thing. Remember, the Fortune website didn't exist till 2016, but you have magazine articles that go back to the 30s. So 175,000 articles, 20,000 transcripts from our conferences, 30,000 articles from the magazine, and then our rankings really at the heart of it. So that's 20 years of the Fortune 1000 and Global 500. So those are 1,000 and 500 rows respectively, with 26 columns of financial performance data, so about 750,000, give or take, data points that these LLMs were sort of trained on. And I realized after I had done this that I probably should have shown you what this thing looks like first, right? What is Fortune Analytics? What AI product did you decide to build? And so there are three main sets of functionality that we agreed on to launch this product with. The first is relatively benign, very normal. So you think about those Fortune 1000 lists, all of the companies, the 26 data points, a very simple web view of it. So the ability to see all of those companies, filter, get different segments and understand them. We actually have a hover state that you can execute generative AI actions directly from this screen on a particular company to get its revenue, to ask about their success. All of that is built in. The second is a regular ChatGPT style ask and answer response, so natural language. How has AI impacted the media space, where it streams back the data, and here there are actually three separate LLM calls. There's the LLM call that gets the query, an LLM call that rewrites the question into a journalistic style title, and then citations of the articles that the model used to go ahead and bring that back. And then the third set, and the stuff that I think is really the killer app of this, and the part that I'm the most excited about, data visualization of that financial data. And this was at the heart of it. The heart of the idea is democratizing the access to the Fortune 500 data. If you go back and you think about a set of information that's 1,000 rows and 26 data points, nobody is going to be able to comprehend that data, even if you're good at pivot tables. But being able to use generative AI to say, show me the revenue or the profit of top companies in the US for a date range. This allows researchers to ask questions, get answers back very, very quickly without having to export data out, run it into a data visualization app, right? It's much more seamless. You don't have to ask for bad data, find out that there was nothing there. It allows you to get hypotheses and sort of prototype them. I think that this is really at the heart of what's good. Now, if you're going to build anything complex, right, and do something cutting edge with technology that hasn't been used, you need to cheat to get to market to do something simple. And so we kept it relatively simple in terms of the overall application itself, right? I've talked to developers for years and years and years, and they argue with me, but I maintain that the best language to use for all development is one that your team is fluent with and one that you can get a lot of developers for, right? And so using a single-page application with Next.js, a full AWS sort of backend with a lot of Lambdas handling the LLM calls, and SageMaker hosting the actual LLMs themselves. So again, de-stressing a lot of the build by not doing anything exotic with the front end so that you can focus a lot of the time and the development on the more complex parts of the software. So let's actually talk about the data visualization itself. By the way, I have a thing for robots and dinosaurs. If you haven't noticed that yet, there will be more, I promise you. So the flow for doing the data visualization, I got a really arcane graph suggested to me from PowerPoint, and rather than torture you with a 12-point sort of bullet point list that doesn't present well, went ahead and used this. But the long and the short of it is the prompt goes from the front-end application to a Lambda that then transforms it to a fast API that hits another Lambda, goes to SageMaker, comes back, and it renders an SVG. What we did here was, I think, simple in idea, but complex in practice, to keep this thing from hallucinating. What we did is we did natural language to Python code, extracting the data from an external data frame. So the LLM can't make up financial numbers. It can get the question wrong, right? It can pull the wrong data, but it can't give you incorrect data, and that's really important when you're talking about financial performance data. So looking at the LLM endpoints, again, I thought this was relatively simple and relatively easy. We use 4 separate endpoints, one for that describe or that ChatGPT style experience, one for the titles, one for the citations, and then again, one to actually do the data visualization. So there are 4 custom trained models for a particular response. The LLM chart itself, Again, this is sort of reiterating what happens, but you're pulling two external data frames. So the query goes in, you are translating to Python code, it is checking for code execution, and then pulling back the data frame and rendering the SVG graphic. Now, take a bit of a diversion here and talk about part of the title, balancing speed and quality. And back when I was the CTO at 3Pillar Global, one day I was confronted by my good friend and colleague, Heather, who was their chief revenue officer, and she says to me, "Jonathan, how do I know your teams are putting out quality work?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, nobody complains to me about my team's qualities." And so I'm going to paraphrase her here, but she looked me dead in the eye and she goes, "An absence of complaints is not proof of quality." And if you take anything from this talk, think about that one, because it's actually really changed the way that I approach software development. How do you know you're building a good product? What metrics are you using to say that it is getting better, that you are progressing, that you are approaching quality? And for this one, we went with 4 main points that we could use to sort of track that. There are actually sub-points on that. I don't want to sort of show how they all roll up. But data integrity, are we getting the correct data? Code execution, does the Python run correctly? Output data accuracy, and then the visualization quality. So we set out 4 sets of metrics, so every time we deployed a new LLM, we had a set of empirical data that we could say, is it getting better? Is it doing the right things? So let's talk about right and wrong. So this is showing a successful extraction of data, right? So you have run the code, it has pulled it, and you have a chart running in ascending order like it should. And then you have, sorry, this is falling off me. All right. Something had to go wrong, otherwise this wouldn't have been a live talk. So this is an example of a failed query. So it pulled the data, and the data are actually correct, but it is ordered incorrectly. So this is something that is a lot easier to train and build guardrails around for interpreting what people are asking for and making sure that that you get the use cases right, and it can provide that. So with that, let's talk about what did we learn. Because if you build anything quickly, you're going to have a lot of lessons that you learned from that. And the first is, and this one is huge, your data is not as clean as you think it is. And we talked about feeding the beast and how all AI applications are built around data. And I think one of the things to watch for is we're all so comfortable with our data. We're used to it, we know it in and out. We don't think about the problems that your data scientists are going to find or the edge cases that you hadn't even sort of thought about. And in our case, you're talking about companies. And 20 years of companies change their name. So you run into problems where Google no longer exists anymore. Google is Alphabet. And so if somebody is making a query asking for Alphabet, are they asking for only when Alphabet existed? Or are they asking for Google and Alphabet? Or are they just asking for Google? Again, Meta, Instagram, Facebook, you run into that same problem. Then you run into a very large problem about naming conventions. And this is sort of really, really huge. You think about JP Morgan Chase. That's its full name in the data structure, but maybe it's just JP Morgan. Or is it J.P. Morgan? Or is it just Chase? People will have a lot of different ways to ask for it. You run into that same sort of thing with HP or Hewlett-Packard or IBM, International Business Machine, right? So you have different ways to address companies, and how is the LLM going to respond to that? And then what happens when companies go away? Hewlett-Packard split into 2 companies. General Electric just split into 3 or 4. And so new company names, and then there are many more edge cases about companies moving in and out of industries. Sometimes they're in pharmaceuticals, sometimes they're not. And how do you handle all of those edge cases? But all of that is not going to come out till you try and train it and you try and use it, and you're going to end up starting to engineer around things in your data. And that's something that you need to get really, really quick or be very, very careful with. The second thing about it, and this is weird having a giant picture of me up there. I put it up there. A designer I worked with years ago decided to make a meme picture of me on LinkedIn, and it kind of cracked me up about something that I said about MVPs. And here's the thing I want to talk about launching something in 9 months and moving very, very fast. An MVP is not a product. It is a hypothesis to prove whether or not a product should exist. And if you're taking things from this, this is one of those things to take, right? Then MVP is not the finish line. It is the beginning, it is the start of the marathon. You have done a warm-up, you are deciding if you're ready to even run the race, especially with AI applications. Again, you won't know how this thing works. You won't know how much it costs. You won't understand your relative quality till very late in the build cycle. And that's why you do an MVP, and it is the beginning of this thing. And when I talk about that, I think a lot of folks at Fortune get annoyed with me using the term MVP because they think I'm king half-ass and we're just going to sort of do a very small thing instead of doing something big and grand. And that's a fight for another day. But I always talk to people about MVPs. A successful MVP has two very important qualities. First, it is the smallest thing of value that somebody will pay for. And that's just a value exchange, right? They are willing to give their time, they're willing to give their attention, they are willing to give money. You are proving that hypothesis. I have created value, and somebody is willing to exchange value for it. The second most important thing about it is it's showing the market the direction that you're headed. You're saying, hey, I built this thing. Try it out. You can see what we're trying to do, and you know it's going to get bigger and better from here. And the second is, and this one I think we kind of learned the hard way when we started building it. AI applications are more successful the more focused that they are. And so what we have up here is we noticed one of the problems with doing natural language search is that anybody can search for anything. And not everybody is an expert on data visualization, so they don't know how to ask for the charts that they wanted. And when we put this in hands of test customers and that, we noticed that people were having a difficult time actually getting charts and graphs. And so we ended up with what we call sort of a Mad Lib style drop down, making sure that people could say, these are the metrics that are available to us. These are the countries, right? These are the years. This is how you construct a query, and help them train them on the data set. It's sort of a shortcut. But I think what I learned from this is that a lot of AI is better behind the scenes when it's seamless and people don't have to understand how to sort of use it. So with that, the third moral of the story, and I'll sort of talk about this for a second, is, and this is huge, and again, I think this is the third big thing I want everybody to take away. All enterprise applications are judged by best-of-breed consumer experience. And you see that if you think about if you've ever had to submit your expenses, right, or use a system like Concur that you have to use. They're incredibly cumbersome and difficult to use. If you build a chatbot, I promise you, everybody is going to compare it to ChatGPT, right? Here's the thing. You don't have $6 billion being poured into that thing every second, and they do. And you're trying to charge, and ChatGPT is not. So if you're building a chatbot, you are competing with a free product with nearly infinite resources behind it. Bad idea. I promise you, very, very sort of bad idea. And so I think taking that and being very focused, again, what is your niche? What are you trying to do? What is differentiated about this product, rather than just trying to go out and train a custom model on your own data, right? If you do that, people are just going to look and naturally make the comparison and tell you all of the reasons that it's not as good as ChatGPT, even if it is. So with that, I'm doing the impossible. I'm actually a little ahead of time, but with that, I give you one last sort of robot dinosaur, and thank you very much.
Amazing, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so much for being a returning speaker and guest. You are also available on the Q&A stage after this.
Yes.
So please do find him. Talk about robot dinosaurs competing with ChatGPT, building technology over many, many years. And I'm looking forward to have you coming to Cluj many, many more times.
Anytime you call, I will come.
Awesome. That's a deal.
Awesome.
We have it on recording. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Jonathan.
Thank you.